So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for March 29th, 2023. We'll follow the agenda as outlined in the issue in the TC repo, which was issue number, I don't see the issue right now. Anyway, the issue was there. Before we get started, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share?
Well, just a reminder that I'll be doing the kickoff for the Node.js 20. So if you have something to merge, you have a couple days. I mean, I'm traveling. I will do it when I arrive at home. So it might extend for a couple days, but just a reminder. And if you need to land anything after this, ping me and we can discuss.
Is that documented somewhere or whatever? In terms of what the cutoff date is, and do we have a link to that maybe?
We have a link to that on the releases.md. It was just, I don't know, I've updated this in a few weeks before. We have discussed it in the Node.js release working group. Let me find the link for you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it might be worthwhile making sure everybody's aware, because it was news to me anyway that it was going to be this soon. So yeah, maybe if you can just grab the link and we can add that
I will
in.
find it.
Okay, so that's good. So what is the official cutoff date?
The official is April 1st.
Okay.
In 3 days.
Okay, the other announcement that was there was Node.conf EU CFP is now open with a focus on Node.js Core. So that's great to hear. And it's always a great conference.
We should also announce the nomination, or at least for other TSC members, there's a nomination for Colin put in a nomination for a TSC member, Moshe Adlo, whose name I probably just mispronounced, and I apologize. But anyway, TSC voting members should go there and thumbs up it or thumbs down or comment privately or whatever. And that'll probably be open for another 6 days or so, I'm guessing.
Okay, sounds good. Any other news people would like to share before we move on? Okay, then the next section is CPC and board meeting updates. So I know, Rich, you pasted in some stuff, but since you're here, you might as well highlight if there's anything we should be aware of.
I don't know if there's anything to highlight, but I will just read off the list, which I copied from Sarah Chips's issue in the CPC repository about things to share with the board. So we're kicking off the election soon for the primary director seat for the CPC. CPC is looking at enabling code spaces for projects, so that might be a fun, interesting thing. There's partner conversations with Vercel to use their services for foundation sites and other needs. And CPC is working to create some documentation and or a web page to describe the collaboration model of OpenJS projects, since a lot of people, may not be clear on where CPC stuff starts and ends and where individual project autonomy starts and ends. And they're working on a satisfaction survey for project leads to get feedback for the CPC. And Claudio just put in the chat that there's a new OpenJS website coming soon, as far as he knows. And so, yeah, that's everything. Thanks for listening to me flat and monotone read something that I probably should have prepared better.
Okay, Matteo, anything on the board front that is worth mentioning?
Matteo cannot use his microphone.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So never mind.
Just type into the chat what Rich mentioned.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. So we'll move on. So let's go first of all to the issue on the metadata proposal for docs, since Claudio is here to primarily for that. So I'll say, Claudio, take it away.
Oh, I'm going right away with sharing my screen. I guess. Where is Zoom? I kind of don't like when you share screen, everything disappears. I like to see everybody's face. So cool. Well, first, some of you already know me. I'm Claudia. Very excited again to be here on the technical steering committee meeting. And I want to just, share some updates since the initial session where I shared, the API metadata proposal. There was a lot of amazing feedback, which I really appreciate. And basically, I just wanted to, address, what was changed, understand the overall feeling for the people that are in the meeting. So, I could decide on next steps, and, how to use everybody's, time in a better way. So the first thing that was reconsidered is supporting internationalization for now, as it was a feeling of the TSC that the immediate benefits, the challenges, are like the benefits are too low and the challenges are too great, both in maintainability and, and in other aspects, that it's better if we, for now support English translations only, the source. And that also, that's pretty much it. Just we're removing the internationalization part of it for now. The takeaways of why this was done are on this issue, which you can also read on my screen. Yep, pretty much. Also with the internationalization change, there's another change that we decided, which is, a single file. So instead of having 3 different files, which, one was just the metadata, and one which is the actual Markdown file, and another would contain additional translations, for example, for metadata on your stuff. We will leverage now gray matter / front matter of Markdown and have the metadata, as a YAML block on the top of the file containing all the metadata, which is way more accessible for the people and way easier to edit, as they don't need to open many different files, know which file relates to what, and etc. Blah blah. Is everything on the top? Yeah, and the third thing is also the takeaways are also available in the issue. And the third and last thing is branch PRs and living docs. This was something that a few of you also, suggested, which is, adding a workflow in the current core repository, which is, if a doc is updated, it generates a preview of the doc, so people can access it. It was also something that, if we go through with the Vercel, adoption, something that we can also do. Regardless of Vercel, like also Cloudflare pages also probably supports that. So it's a POC that we can also come up with, relatively soon. And living docs, which is, well, instead of only having, all the version, like currently the API docs, you can search by version, right? So you want to go to version 16, that's something, or version 18, that's something. So you basically, it's synced with, the tags that are on the core repository. And the idea is to also have another, which is like edge of the edge, which is the living docs, which is basically synced with main, so that people can both when, visiting the API website, they can see what is the latest on the docs of what is to come. And also easily for maintainers, whoever that just wants to see, how their stuff, in their local branches, build. Basically just adding an extra tooling that would allow us to also generate the latest version of the docs based on main. Yeah, pretty much those are the changes. Yeah, I'm open for feedback on those changes and extra feedback on extra nodes or ideas that anybody also has. I would take as no feedback as everybody agrees with. So
Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the major concerns that were raised last time, I do remember like the internationalization was one and multiple files was another. Are there any others that people remember off the top of their head in terms of like major concerns that might be worth asking questions about whether the proposal's changed or not?
I have a question about the metadata in this updated proposal. So it was a concern that the new design, the original new design, would require you to edit multiple files just to make one API change. So would now all the metadata be included in the Markdown file, just like it is now, just in a more structured way?
yeah, in a more structured way on the top. So you actually don't break the common mark spec, which is having invalid YAML, pieces of block in the middle of the document. There's also another change, as was described before, that the Markdown files basically right now you have one file per namespace, right? So you have the whole HTTP with all the HTTP classes and everything on just one big file. So the idea is a different also folder structure, which was also approached on the initial revision of this proposal. Pretty much you have a folder for the namespace, and then you have each Markdown file for class or whatever, etc. You also have a top level navigation for each namespace or etc. It's all described here how it works. But why I'm saying this, if your concern is, well, what's one of the advantages of moving out the YAML to the top of the file if the file is gigantic? And then, well, breaking down the files into smaller files addresses that, so you don't have a humongous Markdown file, which also helps a little bit the Markdown compiler, because right now, even with the current tooling, it emits gigantic files, which for modern browsers, I mean, come on, that's okay, but there are infrastructure concerns that by breaking down the files, creates this benefit.
So I guess if I interpret part of that you might still need to edit more than one file in some cases if you're adding like a new section or something like that.
No, not really.
Right?
Basically, what I'm saying is that instead of having one Markdown file for everything, you just have, for example, one file per class if you want. Like, in other words, pretty much like the reason why right now the filing structure is as it is because the way how the tooling was created to symlink with the actual namespaces that we have, like the actual import modules that we have, from Node core. And with the new tooling, like this will not be a problem anymore. So you can have a folder named whatever you want to name it, with how many Markdown files you want to have it, and then the navigation file that basically tells, hey, which is the order of each part of the content and how they should get put together, basically.
Right, but I guess I'm like for a particular topic. So today, a particular topic might have one huge file, right?
Oh, yes.
Under the proposal, there'll be multiple files. And so like if I was to add a new class, I might actually have to create a new file, or if I was modifying two classes, I might have to modify two files. Whereas in the past, I would only have edited one. So in terms of like, there isn't another, like when I'm looking at the metadata that relates to what's in a file, I don't need to go look somewhere else. But under the proposal, there'll still be more files than there were before. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
I don't know, Tobias, so go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I've got just another question, just more an understanding. If we have one file for, let's say, a class or so, and the class contains a variety of functions with extensive descriptions, would those descriptions be in the Markdown document? Because they usually have some kind of markup in them or so, or would they be part of the YAML block at the top of the file? Description
would be still in Markdown. So everything that is more focused, I guess, yeah, you probably would need to give me the specific example so I can see where it actually, the description actually is. But description of each function is still, on, examples, description, everything, it's still on directly in the Markdown. Like basically what the metadata is like the history table, what are the arguments of the functions, you know, the structure of the class. It's more like the machinery part, right? Of the side of things.
But related, I guess the arguments might be up in the YAML versus inline like they are today.
Yeah, right now they're in line. Some are like, a lot of them follow a similar format, but there's a lot that they just follow whatever format the person that actually did in the time. Yeah.
So in an example like the one I just posted to the chat, it's outgoing message.set headers in the HTTP documentation, which has like multiple example code blocks and all that. So that would be down in the markdown file, but the actual declaration of the, so does that mean you would declare the same function in two places, once in the metadata block and then once in the markdown document?
Sorry, could you repeat, because I just opened the page?
Sure. So does that mean you would declare the same function once in the markdown document and once in the YAML block?
No.
And the tooling will then merge it?
So no. So basically what happens is that you have a heading for the function, right? Basically we're going to use custom heading IDs to like link the part that is in the metadata to the description. So basically it will generate the same, you know, like added in the parameters and etc. Directly on the final output without needing to repeat it on the markdown.
Right, so you're not repeating any information, but you do have two separate locations in the same file that describe the same function. One contains the metadata and the other one contains the description.
Yes.
And with like cross links between different documents, right now they work just the same if you're on the Node.js website and you're clicking on links, or if you browse the files on GitHub. Would that still work the same way? Yes,
the idea is, of course, that all links, they should be the same. Like there's one final decision that we also want to address, like explore actually. It's, for example, even having different files, markdown files, would in the end, the result HTML, we just want to put them all together in one HTML file, or do we want to actually have different files for each one of them? If it's the later one, sorry, then we would need, of course, to handle redirects, pretty much because now what was just an http.html will now be in, for example, slash API slash http slash something.html. Then you need to have redirects for that, but that's only if it's the later one. But definitely the idea is that all current symbolic links and, you know, heading ID tags, they should work the same as expected, either by recreating redirects, which is basically, you know, just for the legacy stuff, so people that land from old links to, you know, be able to still see the same content that they were seeing, or as a permanent solution. That's more a technical implementation detail, but again, the idea is we don't want to break existing stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anybody else have any questions, concerns? See a thumbs up from Mateo. I think the ask would be if people have any potential concerns or whatever, to make sure that Claudio is aware of them in the next little while, because otherwise the sort of at the high level, the understanding is like, hey, the proposal seems okay to people, and he'll probably start moving forward on it.
If you don't mind, I'll just throw in one last question. Since we've kind of now changed the design to, again, have the metadata and the descriptions and all that in a single markdown file, which is essentially what we have now, just in a much less structured way, do we gain the same benefits by just changing our current markdown files to be in a stricter format that we can parse just as easily? So it seems kind of more like the intuitive approach to us who are used to writing the documentation in this way. to require function arguments and return types and all that to be written in a very easy to parse way. That we've kind of been trying to do that, but I realized that we are very inconsistent in that regard. I'm just wondering if that's just about the same as putting the metadata up top. I understand there are certain markdown conventions, not necessarily standards, that goes against. But this custom tooling that's being proposed here is also, again, custom tooling. It's not like we are using standard stuff.
Yes and no. So the custom tooling, indeed, for example, if you want to have a full generated markdown or HTML page containing, for example, those arguments and stuff, yes, you would need to be able to parse the front matter. But I think the difficulty for any other person who just wants to create their own Node.js documentation generator or HTML parser or whatever, it's way easier by following the current standards, which, I mean, front matter is not really part of Common Mark, but it's something that is widely, like basically every, Markdown parser that supports front matter either by a plugin or natively. So for them, it creates a lot of customization because by also creating a standard of, the name of each parameter and etc., you have a defined schema, right? Instead of actually cursive, writing of people that they write in different ways with different wording, with different things, right? But still, the idea is also to have some sort of both ESLint plugin that tries to validate at least, little nitpicks. For example, you added 2 different new paragraphs for something, but the standard is after heading, you have only 1 paragraph kind of thing. So to try to create a little bit more of consistency. But again, there's so much we actually want to standardize without actually, making the life of the developer harder by creating too many limitations and rules, right? I'm not sure if this answers your question. There are trade-offs, if that's what you're asking. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think you've answered the question in a way. I wasn't really aware that there are many people trying to have their custom generators based on our docs still. But if that's the thing, then...
Oh, no, sorry if I implied that was the thing. I'm just saying that both for maintaining the current tooling, if you make something that is simpler, and not that much custom, and by adopting front matter, it would allow, I'm not sure if other people are like, I don't have made a survey or like searched, but it would, yes, remove a little burden in developer experience. In terms of the contributors' perspective, I think that having a standard format that then, for example, I'm adding a new function, I just know how the metadata is, like function name, parameters, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, it's a standardized YAML format. There's no room for error because if you try to do something that is outside the convention, ESLint or whatever, the tooling that we create will complain, right? So it also removes a little bit of the, thought that we have right now, contributors to really read carefully what people are adding when they're writing Markdown, because yeah, and those are very little things. Like if you make a wrong indentation level of a list, or even accidentally a wrong, heading level, like the current tooling will not recognize the thing as it was intended, and it's something very sometimes hard, for example, to assess in reviews. If people are not looking specifically for that specific thing,
I guess one of the things like I can see in Tobias's question was like the trade-off. There's some cost to moving the parameters away from the main text, right? And you get that, just evaluating that trade-off of like, yeah, now you can't see it all in line. Dumb question maybe, but like if it was the same YAML format, but in line with the function itself, that would be a different balance in terms of that trade-off. How much harder does that make it to use and gather the YAML, I guess?
Well, it's having inline YAML, both, like if the question is, for tooling, both having it inline YAML or in the front matter, is already custom syntax. Just one is a more known, which is font matter, and its order is something that if you just try to use any kind of markdown generator or parser, it will fail. Only OR tooling supports that, and that's kind of the head block. So by using more widely known formats, at least that part removed from it. It's also because like ESLint or any other like linting tooling can't really process out of the box if the YAML that is in line with your description and examples and remaining things is valid. Like we would need to create on top another thing or a plugin or whatever to see if that is working correctly, which is even more extra work. But if the concern is, I added a new description and now I'm modifying the metadata and I want to easily see my changes, well, I think one of the things that we also want to allow in the tooling is hot reloading. So if you're generating it to HTML format, to support hot reloading. So as you type on your file and you save, you will see the changes on the web preview, but that's not part of the proposal itself. It's just like part of the extra tooling that we could create to, better the developer experience.
I remember you had an example repository set up for the original proposal. Is there also an example for the new proposal?
No, I haven't actually done that because pretty much those are the changes. It's just removing these other files and moving the YAML to the top.
Okay.
I can of course do those changes if you want, but it's
no, all good. I believe you when you say it's literally just moving that YAML block to the top of the markdown file.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, if not, we'll say thanks, Claudio, for that and the update and all the work so far, for sure.
Yeah.
And we'll move on to the next issue. Go ahead.
Before we move, if you don't mind, just wanted to say that then, pretty much next steps is now, if the feeling of the TSC is a positive one, I would love if you could just give a thumbs up on the original next 10 issue so I can better understand the overall feeling of of the people. Then I can update the main issue with the new changes, and then I think we can over the next month start actual planning, making this happen. There's also in the issue on the Google Doc that explain what are basically the steps, on how to make this in incremental steps, both the tooling and the proposal and etc. And just wanted to also appreciate Tobias' question. I really appreciate them. Really good that you're putting us in check here. I wanted to thank you everybody for your time.
I threw the issue in the chat, Claudio. Is that the issue you want the thumbs up on, or is it a different issue?
Yep, that's correct. That's the right issue.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll be going then. Thank you everybody again. And what?
Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. Stay safe, y'all, and see you in the next time.
See you later. Okay, so the next issue on the agenda is under Node.js Node, and it's lib runtime deprecate plenty code. This is number 47202. If anybody is here who put it on the agenda, feel free to jump in.
I think Joyi put it on the agenda and Matteo requested changes on that PR. I know that Matteo can't talk right now, so I'll just summarize very briefly. It's about runtime deprecating puny code, which Matteo thinks we should do in the upcoming 21 release, which is not going to be an LTS release, and there's little cost to maintaining it for one more major release. And there's a high risk of breaking stuff by doing it in Node 20, which is going to be exactly the same breakage as in Node 21, but Node 21 is not going to be an LTS release. I hope I summarized that fairly, Matteo.
And Colin and Danielle both put a +1 or a thumbs up in the chat, and I'll agree. Oh, Colin's clarifying that his +1 was to something else that I said.
Okay. So yeah, so I guess it's, you know, Matteo has basically requested changes, and the suggestion was to do it in 21. So if I guess the ask is for TSC members to go in and weigh in on that suggestion versus landing the PR as it is itself.
I think process-wise, we can't really. I believe the only way to override the objection, other than through a discussion, would be through a vote, which we are not going to get done before April 1st. So I guess any discussion would have to be very fast if we do want to include it in Node 20.
I mean, wait, do we actually need a vote? Is there
No, we're not at the stage yet where we are trying to override the objection. So I'm just saying that if the cutoff for Node 20 is April 1st, then any discussion on that matter would have to be very soon.
Oh, I see. So actually, even if we just delay landing this till April 2nd, it automatically gets punted to...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Matteo's comment was like, if anybody has a strong motivation to land in 20, it'd be good to bring up, but
I mean, we could just add a don't land on... Okay, well, anyway, yes. We just add a label to not land on V20, for example, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, after the cutoff, I think it could land, you know. So it will go to the node 21. So yeah, I'm good with it. Of not landing it on 20, given that it might break a few things. Who knows? But yeah, on 21 looks like the safer approach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And I don't really think there's particular urgency to, you know, get puny code runtime deprecated. You know, it's not like it's going to be removed anytime too soon. And I don't think waiting one more release is going to impact that much.
I think the sentiment I'm hearing is we'll probably leave it, and I think that's the default thing that will happen unless, you know, maybe if anybody here feels strongly, as Matteo was saying, that it should make it earlier, then they need to start to rally to get that consensus before the first. Otherwise, it'll probably just be in 21.
If it's okay with everyone, I'll just leave a comment that says this was briefly discussed at the TSC meeting. There was consensus to land this in 21 and not 20. So, you know, please don't land this until after April 3rd or whatever the cutoff is, and I'll remove the TSC agenda label.
Sounds good to me.
All right, it's happening.
Okay, so then we can move on to the next issue, which is proposal making performance team a working group. This is number 1343.
Well, I think we discussed it many times, and I think the last session we decided to remove it from the agenda once it will be we decided to be a strategic initiative, right? If I remember, it is this.
That's my
That sounds right to me. And I see that there was a strategic initiative.
Yeah, the only thing I raised it in, I don't know, 2 sessions ago, it was like normally strategic initiatives, we have an end goal or something like this. But in this case, it's just a continuous work. So if we are good with that, I'm good as well.
Okay, so I think I've taken those notes and we could take the TSC agenda off because I think, like you said, probably we don't have anything more to discuss unless we don't think we want to make a strategic initiative, which seemed to be the path. Okay, I'll remove the TSC agenda tag so it won't show up next time. Next, we can flip over to the strategic initiatives. I don't know if there's any comments on the issue itself. So if somebody could check that while I'm going to the strategic initiatives page, that would be great.
I think James, before leaving, sent a message about happy news on the quick status. He's slicing the bigger pull request into several smaller ones for review, and things is getting landed. So
Okay, so let me just quick James. That's great. Sorry, I'm just going over to strategic initiative lists. Okay. I don't know, Shenzong, if you have any update on the Shadow Realm.
I don't have any updates this time.
Okay. Joey, anything on the startup snapshot front? If you're talking, Joey, we can't hear you, but. Okay, maybe there's a challenge with the microphone or something. Anyway, next 10.
She put something in the chat, but yes, exactly.
Okay. Right, okay. In terms of next 10, we did have a discussion in the next 10 meeting today where some of the foundation staff showed up and they're going to help run a survey from the next 10 group, which we hope to have done before the collaborator summit and be able to review some of the feedback there. There were some suggestions and tweaks to the questions, but if you're interested in taking a look at the current form of the questions, you can take a look in here just as a reminder. Paste this here. This is the base. That's going to be some wording and stuff, but that's going to be that format. What's there is basically the substance of what the survey will look like. And I think that takes us to the end of the list of people that we have here for strategic initiatives. So at this point, are there any other topics that people would like to discuss before we switch over to a private session?
To do a real quick check. Joey mentioned that she put something in the docs, so about for the strategic initiative update for startup snapshot stuff. Making progress on the SEA integration needs more tests. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
oh,
Thank
It's good. Perfect.
just as a small note about the permission model, I've shared a lot of these in this meeting. We found Tobias found a bad security, actually a bad security design. I would say it's like very hard to mitigate a particular security vulnerability, and looks like we are reaching a consensus to drop the .deny to deny things in runtime, and just a heads up about it.
Okay. Any other topics or issues before we flip over? Okay, if not, thanks for everybody's time. Thanks for everybody who's watching on YouTube, and we will see you